Welcome to the Mid Week Tease with me, Adelle Onyango, where I share some random and not too random thoughts on things. And in this episode, let's talk about something that I find really hard to pronounce. So if I mess it up through this episode, please just forgive me. Catastrophizing. Yes, got it. I don't know why for some reason I'm always tempted to say catastrophizing instead of look, I'm struggling again. Catastrophizing. That one. Anyway, that's what I want to talk about in this episode because it is something that I battle with. I've gotten much better, but I still have a lot of work to do. If you're wondering what this is, have you ever received one email or even like a text or WhatsApp or a problem has come up and within minutes, your mind has convinced you that your life is about to fall apart? So you find that you're not responding to what happened anymore. You're responding to the disaster your mind has invented. And so in this episode, I want to unpack why our minds do it and how this thing just steals our peace, man. And maybe we can swap some tips on how to stop believing every scary story that fear tells us. So that's basically catastrophizing, right? When your mind takes uncertainty and just flips it into disaster. So something small happens, as I said earlier, and you swiftly go to I'm doomed. Your boss says, can we talk higher? You've already decided I'm losing my job. Somebody around you's energy changes and you think they're leaving me or I've done something wrong. They're leaving me. I'm a terrible person. You get what I'm saying? Or a money issue comes up and you think everything is collapsing. That one is where I am. Or maybe you have one conflict in a relationship and you think this relationship is over. And what's really wild is sometimes it happens so fast that we don't even realize that we're no longer in reality and we have stepped into this horror film that has been written by fear, right? And I think because of how fast it happens, very many of us confuse this with intuition. But many times it's not intuition. Many times it's anxiety, And I think maybe a good place to start this conversation is, why do we catastrophize in the first place? If you identify with whatever I'm saying so far, this doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that your mind learned to scan for danger. And maybe you experienced a time in your life where there was a lot of unpredictability and that taught you to always expect something bad. Or you experienced a disappointment and that taught you to brace for something bad to happen. Or you survived trauma and it taught your nervous system, prepare for the worst so that it hurts less. It's like our attempt at control. But anticipating the pain doesn't really prevent the pain. You know what I mean? It often just makes us suffer twice and for longer. You suffer once in your imagination and then maybe, a big maybe, again in reality. And often I've found the imagined suffering is worse because it goes to the extreme. And then in reality, the extreme hardly ever happens. I read up on this concept called cognitive distortions, right? And it talks about the ways the mind can misinterpret reality, and catastrophizing is one of them. And it often disguises itself as like preparation. And so we're just telling ourselves, you know what? I'm just being realistic. This could happen and I need to prepare. You're not. My sister, you're trying to rehearse for disaster. You are rehearsing disaster. And catastrophizing really steals from us. Oh my God. I normally feel so tired after a round of catastrophizing. It feels like a workout, right? But even more than that, it steals our peace. It steals our presence. It makes it hard for us to trust people. it makes it hard for us to build because you're too scared to start, because in your head, you've already imagined the worst that could happen and made it a reality. It makes it hard for us to love, to take risks, to rest, because like your mind is just consistently predicting collapse. So how in the world are you meant to relax into life? And I think one of the saddest bits for me when it comes to catastrophizing is it makes us suffer over futures that never arrive. When I was doing my internal audit of just the number of times I've catastrophized, none of those realities have ever come true. But I have suffered those realities in my mind. Does that make sense? They never came true in reality, but I experienced them in my mind. Think about that. They never came, but I experienced the suffering, hey? So if you're listening and you're like, okay, what are the signs I could be catastrophizing? So you might, heavy on the might, you might be doing it if you jump from inconvenience to ruin in seconds. Something small has inconvenienced your day. In seconds, you've turned it into ruin. You might be doing it if you confuse possibility with inevitability. So you go from, it's possible this could happen, to, for sure, this shit is about to go down. You know what I mean? You might be doing it if you assume the worst case scenario is the likely scenario. Am I shouting? You might be doing it if you rehearse disasters more than solutions. This is a big one, especially for me. With the things that I'm running, I need to be solution driven instead of rehearsing the disaster over and over and over again. You might be doing it if you often need reassurance because your mind keeps escalating stories. Does any of that sit with you? So maybe let's try and get a bit more practical, right? When you catch yourself catastrophizing, which is something I've gotten better at catching. To be honest, I'm going to give myself props for that. Recently, I had a situation business-wise, right? And it was financially leaning, but there was a solution. You know, this is the crazy part. There was a solution, and a very credible solution. But the first thing I did when the situation presented itself, I catastrophized like crazy. Hey! I already knew I'm shutting down my business. And then the worst thing is, when I am going to this worst case scenarios first and not solutions, it often unearths all of the naysayers in my entire life. You know, the auntie who said this, the coworker who said that. It brings up their words almost to affirm that, yes, not only is this worst case scenario gonna happen for sure, but also I'm not good enough. I'm terrible at this. I'm useless. Why am I even trying? Look at that. Of course it would fail. You know what I mean? And I'm proud that I caught myself, because in the past, I would never catch myself. I would just actually work myself into stress. And I've really been trying to get better at managing stress and not collecting stress that is either non-existent or is not mine. Because I've been watching a lot of women online who've been sharing how stress has manifested in their lives in terms of disease. And I'm like, Adele, you've got to get better at this. You've got to get better at this. And so I caught the thought and I interrogated it, and I was like, bruh, first, we've been here before. Also, we have data, number one. Number two, There is a solution right in front of your nose. Where are you running? Murife, where are you running? Why are you running to worst case scenario? What's happening, babes? And I really was like, where? I thought I had dealt with this shit. How is it coming up again? You know what I mean? So when you catch yourself catastrophizing, the first thing I think you should do is to ask yourself, what do I know versus what am I predicting? So, for example, it's a situation where your boss has asked you to talk. The fact is, my boss has asked me to talk. The prediction you have made is I'm getting fired. These two things are not the same thing. And so when you ask, what do I know versus what am I predicting? You are separating the fact from the fear. And then it's easier for you to see it. And then I think it's also important to go another step and stop feeding yourself only the worst case scenario, right? Ask yourself this next question. What's the best case? You know, you've already built what the worst case is, but what's the best case and what's the most likely case? The one that's in the middle there of the best and the worst, the one that's dancing around the most likely case is often where reality lives. But we jump past it and we rush to the worst case. Another thing you have to ask yourself is this intuition or is this fear? And this is something I'm actually doing more often, right? Where I'm listening to my body. I've really dedicated this part of my life to start trusting my body again. I've gone through so many things in life where I've abandoned my body. I have placed other people over trusting my body. And now I'm back and I'm listening and I'm like, tell me what you're communicating to me, right? And in the process of doing that, when I get a feeling, I interrogate and say, is this intuition or fear? And man, intuition has saved me. It has saved me time and time again. And I go back to those moments where I listen to my intuition. And you know what stands out? My intuition is never hurried or urgent. Even when it's a life or death situation, mark you. It's very strong and bold, but grounded. It's never, oh my God, what's going on? No, run. No. It's very matter of fact. It's never a question. There's never a question mark at the end of the sentence from my intuition. It's always a full stop. But with fear, not only is there a question mark, there's panic. You can even throw in a couple of emojis. I'm fainting. And I just learned now I take a beat and I ask my body, pardon, come again. And I feel, and I'm like, this is not intuition. Fear screams. It's hyper, it's urgent, it's loud. Intuition almost feels like a whisper, but a very grounded, rich whisper, which is why I tell people to make silence your friend, because it helps you hear your body better and you get better at distinguishing who is talking to you. Is it fear or is it your intuition? Intuition is very clear. There's clarity, and fear spirals. They're very two different energies. You also need to ask yourself, if the worst case scenario happened, how would I cope? How would I cope? Because sometimes the worst case scenario happens and you're like, and then I will be distraught, and then I will lose my job, and then I'm going to be homeless, and then I'm not going to be able to pay my rent, and then I'm not going to be able to buy food, and then I'm just going to be finished. There'll be nothing for me. That's not true. Because catastrophizing often erases your resilience. You have survived hard things before. Many times before. Why would this time be any different? Don't forget that. Another thing that I think is also very important is that you need to regulate your body before you start arguing with your thoughts, because that battle is hectic and it's exhausting. And if your nervous system is dysregulated, you're not ready. You're not ready for that battle, okay? So you need to do your breath work. You need to breathe. You need to go for a walk. You need to ground yourself, do your grounding exercises. You need to meditate. For those of you who pray, you need to pray. You need to move your body and then revisit the thought. Because sometimes the thought isn't true. You know what I mean? Your body is just in a state of alarm and you need to just woosa before you start telling your mind, bring thought number one, let's interrogate. You get what I'm saying? So a huge part of what's been helping me navigate catastrophizing and like reframe and erase it is practicing saying, this is a thought. It's not a prophecy. It's a thought. It's not a fact. This is a thought. It's not a prophecy. And not every fear that arises deserves your faith. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we have more faith in disaster than possibility. And what's up with that? Why do we do that? How can we have more faith in disaster than in possibility? So I want to leave you with this. Catastrophizing is often fear that's just trying to narrate the future, but fear isn't an oracle. You know what I mean? It's not, it cannot see the future. And so you don't have to believe every story that your anxious mind tells you. And I found that perhaps when it comes to healing, it looks like telling your fear, but then you're not a fortune teller. And in small steps, you can start to meet uncertainty without, immediately calling it doom. And then you move to a point where you start to truly believe that worst case scenario that your mind is predicting isn't coming. I hope you connected with this episode. And if you did, please share it with someone that you love. Thanks for listening to the Mid Week Tease, a Legally Clueless Africa production. Episodes go out every Wednesday, and you can learn more about us by going to legallycluelessafrica.com.